On January 17th, 2021, Catherine tweeted, Star Wars fan, crying, You can't keep doing this! George Lucas. Now this guy is a pretty bad customer. His name is Darth Crumbo. This is the Museum of Twitter, the show where we talk about the most important tweets in the history of Twitter.com. Yes, I'm aware that there's another canonical George Lucas tweet that I've yet to cover. I'm just waiting for the right guest, but I wanted to cover this one because it's incredibly accurate, and in this case, I think I do have a guest who can speak to its accuracy. To discuss whether or not George Lucas would actually name a character Darth Crumbo, I reached out to Patrick Cotnoir, who is the producer of one of my favorite comedy shows in the world, if not my favorite comedy show in the world, the George Lucas Talk Show, in which comedian Connor Ratliff pretends to be George Lucas in the setting of a talk show. And actor Griffin Newman plays Watto. It's the best. Anyway, here's my conversation with Patrick. So, Patrick, you're someone who I would say is in the 99.9th percentile of thinking about George Lucas's mind. Yeah. Not Star Wars, but thinking about George Lucas's mind. Yeah. So, how accurate of a depiction of his mind, his speaking pattern, would you say that this tweet is?
I mean, it feels right. I assume. Do you know the Force Awakens story, or not Force Awakens? Do you know the Force Unleashed story?
No, I do not. You can tell it for me and the audience.
Great, I love it. There was a video game called The Force Unleashed. Came out in probably 2007-ish, somewhere in that range. And it was supposed to be set between Revenge of the Sith and New Hope, and it was about Darth Vader's secret apprentice. He ended up, it was Starkiller, was the name that they landed on. But the name that he pitched two. He came in and he said, what about Darth Icky or Darth Insanius? Which I assume is what this tweet is referring to. It feels realistic, but also you read it and you're like, sure, Darth Crumbo, that sounds great. I'm into it. Give it to me. It feels like something he would say. He's a goofball and he likes his weird names and he likes his sometimes on the nose. You don't get General Grievous without Darth Crumbo.
I mean, the one that I always go back to is the guy who sells death sticks being Elan Sleazebagano.
Sure.
The one I also go back to too is how the prequels were done during a lot of that had to do with the Iraq War, and how there's the Camino senator named Hallie Bertoni.
Sure, of course. There's also Lot Dodd from the Trade Federation, who is Trent Lott and Chris Dodd. There's Newt Gunray, which is Newt Gingrich first name, and then Gunray is just Ray Gunn. It's great. I mean, look, there's names when you get further down the list where you're like Elan Sleazebagano. I don't know if that's in the script.
No,
you don't know if that's just some marketing guy or someone who's writing like the essential guide to characters or creating the action figures or something like that. Like it might be someone like that, but I like to think that all of these names are George.
Yeah, and I think that because if you think about it, his two first big villain names were Darth Vader and Darth Sidious, which is just Darth Invader and Darth Insidious. And I think what this tweet gets at for me, and I wanted, because obviously it's not just George Lucas talking, there's also the fan talking. That Star Wars is a series that's taken so seriously by the fans and treated like has such like sacred lore. And it's like George Lucas is like, the main character, he flies in the sky, his name's Skywalker.
It's very silly. Something I did like while reading this tweet is it's also fun to read it like David Lynch. You can read it and be like, oh yeah, that could also be a Lynch thing.
He's a really bad customer. I mean, because really bad customer is something I can imagine George Lucas saying.
100%. Look, you love him. You gotta love him because he wears his heart on his sleeve and he comes out with all these silly names and he's like, no, that's what it's called. And you just better get used to it because that's what it's called.
Exactly. And as I mentioned, you've thought about George Lucas's mind forever because you are the producer of the George Lucas Talk Show, which is, as I've said before, on this show when I've referenced it, my favorite live show to go to. If you've never watched it, I recommend it highly. There's a documentary about it, which I'm very excited to watch, that's coming out. Yeah. Where can people get that, and what's the deal with the documentary?
Yeah, there's a documentary that these filmmakers started making at the very end of 2018. I think we started in December 2018. And it came out, when would it have been, 2023, I guess? But it's coming out on Blu-ray right now. And that was our big thing. When this thing was being made, I said, I want to make sure that we get a physical media copy of it and a Blu-ray. And because it's been out on streaming, because of all that stuff, I said, well, we need to really like pack this thing to the gills with bonus features to make it worthwhile for people to buy. So on this Blu-ray, which is called I'm George Lucas, a Connor Ratliff story, it's a documentary about the George Lucas Talk Show and about Connor Ratliff, the man who plays George Lucas. There are 55 audio commentaries and there's 100 hours of bonus features. As much as that can fit on those two discs, and then you get a digital playlist of stuff to fill out the rest of it. It's really
It's the most George Lucas talk show bit I can imagine.
100%. Well, people can get it at I'mGeorgeLucas.com, and that gives you the links to the Kino Lorber, the Amazon, the Target, the wherever else you can buy it. Or you can just buy it digitally if you want, but that's boring. Buy a physical copy, because it's been the last year of my life and I'm going a little crazy. So we need to get this out into the world.
I really want to thank Patrick for coming on the show again to help me out with this tweet. A distinction I want to make is that a Darth Crumbo is different than a Glupshido. A Glupshido is a term from a Tumblr post which refers to a background character in Star Wars that like real Star Wars obsessives are obsessed with. Or like a character from one of these Star Wars cartoons. I think that there can be a Glupshido that's also a Darth Crumbo, but I think an essential part of a Darth Crumbo is that the name has to be really on the nose. And I also kind of think it needs to come from George Lucas himself. So I just wanted to clarify that those cannot be used interchangeably. But if you want to hear me talk about that Tumblr post more, you're in luck. That is the first episode of my Patreon bonus series. Anyway, lots of people, including Mr. Chow, as Patrick and I discussed, point out that now this guy is a pretty bad customer is something you can hear in Lucas's voice. And when I was doing research for this, I found another example that Patrick and I didn't even talk about. Like, apparently he named a character when he was visiting the set of The Mandalorian, and he named the character Axewoves, which led Crispo to say his ass is not beating the Darth Crumbo allegations. And people miss Darth Crumbos. Russell Johnson quote tweeted Catherine's tweet and said, "What I wouldn't give to have Lucas back giving me something new like Darth Crumbo over revisiting Maul again." Although some people say that there are still new Darth Crumbos even if George Lucas isn't involved. Jacqueline says, "The Bad Batch did not just introduce a villain named Dr. Hemlock. This is so Star Wars, I'm thinking about that Darth Crumbo tweet." In a 2021 Keaton joke that when they looked up villains for Marvel's The Eternals, they found some names like Dragona and Dolpus, which made them say, "I don't know anything about them and they all sound like that Darth Crumbo tweet." Which is definitely fair, especially when Dragona is concerned. Which leads me to believe that the dragon in Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire, Drogon, might be the quintessential Darth Crumbo. Like, yes, I know that he's Drogon not because he's a dragon, but because of Khal Drogo, but it still just sounds like George R. R. Martin replaced the A in dragon with an O and called it Drogon. But even as I say that, no one touches George Lucas in this area. People have devoted their lives to studying the lore he created. Meanwhile, he was just like, "Oh, this guy's pretty bad. Let me call him Darth Evil." And I love him for it. Follow me for a new tweet every day, and please consider joining my Patreon, patreon.com/Museum of Twitter. We get a weekly bonus episode called The Museum of Not Twitter, and you get to vote on what I cover on Subscriber Sundays.